Morning, everyone. My name is Ted Norcott, and today I'm going to be giving you a talk about how we self-serve Smallworld XML trail information and share that out as CSV, shape, and KML. A little bit about myself. I've been with Fortis BC now going on 23 years, and I've been working with FME software for a little bit longer, around 25 years. And my education background is I have a geography degree from Carleton University and a diploma in cartography and GIS from Sir Sanford Fleming College, as well as some BCIT courses. Fortis BC, we are the largest gas service area in North America. We cover the largest area. We are also the leading energy provider for British Columbia. And we cover the majority of the British Columbia area, as you can see. So we have service down in Vancouver on the coast. We run completely along the border, all communities. We also run through the middle, I call it the backbone of BC, up in the interior. We also have service area up in Whistler, as well as on Vancouver Island. I'm sure you guys are experiencing this as well. Repetitive and frequent data conversion requests. If you are, it's time to automate the madness. So a little background on the whole purpose of this talk. So going back about 3 years ago, we started receiving a lot of requests for data translation, and they were categorized, I had to categorize them as being all quite similar things. So these were repeated requests for simple data manipulation. And what was happening is we would get emails or links to folders where the users in our engineering group would have a series of XML files that they wanted converted over to shape or CSV. And in some points, they wanted KML as well. Now, these were easy to do, very simple. But when you start adding up each request, it does take up quite a bit of time. And these requests can be quite disruptive when you're working on other projects. So what started happening was our requesters actually began to ask us if there was an easier way for them to do it themselves. And of course I said, yes, because we have FME server. So anytime you have repetitive requests for similar information, those requests can and should be automated. So the next step, of course, was to build it being the workspace, test it, and then automate it on FME server. There's a variety of benefits here, not just for myself, but for the company as well. Fortis BC employees using Smallworld, they can create points, lines, and polygons easily within Smallworld and then save them as an XML file. Additional GIS software and other tools are not required. And as we all know, FME is format agnostic. So we could share this out to a whole variety of other formats, as you are all aware of. Now I'm going to do a quick demonstration on how the users are creating their own data and then automating it through FME server. Now for a demonstration on how our users are creating these points, lines, and polygons using the trail. Now I've got us back to that location in the previous slide, Bear Creek Road. And in this example, we have a planner who wants to add a new proposed pipeline, but they don't want to put it into GIS yet because it's all theoretical. So they just want to create a path or a line for that particular pipeline. And this is how they do it. So they use the trail. And the way the trail works in Smallworld, there's something called a trail point menu, which comes up like that. And there's some snapping capabilities, so he can snap or she can snap to the vertex. And then they can draw their proposed theoretical line. And from there, they then save it. We have a designated folder for these XML files, which later you'll see how that works with FME server. And here we're just going to call this Bear Creek location proposed line. So that gets saved. Next, I'm going to show how they would create a point. Very simple. They want to maybe have a location where there's going to be a fitting here, such as a valve. They just click on the end of the line. It creates a vertex point. They go back up to trail point and they save. And I'm just going to type in valve. Okay. Next, this has more to do on the engineering side, where they have a requirement where they have to provide an area of disturbance where they're going to be putting in a new pipeline. And in that case, they need to submit a polygon location to the Oil and Gas Commission. So this is how they do the polygon. So we're just going to pretend that the area of disturbance is running just along this right of way for Bear Creek Road. Approximately perpendicular. Okay. And then we're just going to close the polygon. And then the user will then go back to the trail point menu and save. And this one we will just call OGC area. And then save that. And over to my right here, if you haven't noticed already, these files are being created by users, and the ones that I just did are located right here. So the next step will be to convert these using FME server. Okay, so now I'm going to show you FME server. This is what the users use to generate the output they need. When you log into FME server, this is the welcome page you get. And in there, we have a variety of repositories. So we have one for engineering. And in there, we have the workspace that I've been talking about today, which is the trail XML to CSV shape KML. So the user just selects that file. And you can see here, it's going to process everything that is in XML. And they just hit run. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see the XML files, and then you will then see corresponding folders for each one. So let's take a look at the proposed valve folder right here. So in there, the workspace has created a CSV file, which will have the XY coordinates for the valve. As you can see here, that worked. It borrows the name from the XML file and attaches that as an attribute. It has also created a shape file, and it even designates what type of geometry it is. And then here we have the KML file. And as I mentioned, this is taking place for all of the XML files in this folder. Okay, so moving on here. I thought it'd be worthwhile showing you what one of the XML files actually looks like when you open it up. This would represent a 2-point line, So we have two sets of coordinates. And what I wanted to show you was the hierarchical structure within an XML file. In other words, an XML file is not a flat file until you actually run it through FME, which I'll show you. So now we're going to take a look at FME. I wanted to save this towards the end because it's kind of the most interesting part of how this whole thing comes together. So we have one source being the XML file, and then we have 1, 2, 3 destinations, CSV, Esri shape, and KML. And now we'll take a look at the workflow. So this is the XML object, your source object. And as I mentioned, it's in a hierarchical structure. So the first thing we have to do is flatten out that file. And there's a couple of transformers in here. I won't go into a lot of detail, but the most important one is the list exploder. What that does is it flattens the XML into feature elements, making them available for further manipulation. Then we get into some attribute renaming. There's an expression evaluator for X and Y so that we can get the X and Y coordinates for the CSV. Next, we have a vertex creator, which is then being used to create either a point, line, or polygon shape output. And then we have those 3 destinations for shape. Then from there, we have to actually reproject the coordinates into lat long, which is what Google Earth requires, the KML format. So that's what that's for. And then from there, we have a point connector similar to shape. And from here, it designates or it determines if it's a point, line, or polygon, and then outputs it into the appropriate file format. There's some KML styling that goes on here as well. And then you have your destination KMZ. The list exploder, as I mentioned, it flattens the XML file into usable XY point feature elements. It makes those coordinate features available for further manipulation. As you can see, there seems to be no limits with FME. It works in batch mode. All source XML files are now organized into folders under either CSV, shape, or KML formats. I just wanted to also show you what the Smallworld trail data that I demonstrated looks like in Google Earth. So right here, you can see where the point feature for the valve. And this is the running line for the proposed pipe. And this red boundary in this treat area is the Oil and Gas Commission requirement anytime FortisBC disturbs along a right-of-way for a transmission pipe. And that's what that represents. So in conclusion, engineers and planners are more than happy to have the tools and output formats available on demand. FME Workbench and FME Server continue to further help FortisBC place the power of data into the hands of its employees. As a closing remark, automate those repetitive, boring tasks. Focus on the analysis and value-added work that you do every day. Thank you.